When I was in a coma after a car accident, my father signed a do not resuscitate order so the medical bills wouldn't drain his inheritance. While I fought for my life in intensive care, he was at my grandmother's house, forging documents to steal the property she'd left to me in her will. I survived against the odds, and when I woke up and discovered what he'd done, I didn't confront him privately. I exposed him publicly at the church, where he'd spent decades building his reputation as a pillar of the community. What happened next tore my family apart and put my father behind bars. Let's get into it. The accident happened on a Tuesday morning. I was driving to work when a truck ran a red light and T-boned my car on the driver's side. I don't remember the impact. I don't remember the ambulance. I don't remember the first 3 weeks in the hospital. What I do remember is waking up disoriented and in pain, with tubes everywhere and my Aunt Patricia sitting next to my bed crying. "You're awake," she said, grabbing my hand. "Oh, thank God you're awake. Where am I?" I managed to whisper. "The hospital," she said. "You've been in a coma for 3 weeks. You were in a terrible accident." "My father?" I asked, because despite everything, despite our complicated relationship, he was still my father and I expected him to be there. Patricia's face darkened. "He's not here," she said, "and there's a lot we need to talk about when you're stronger." Over the next few days, as I slowly regained strength, Patricia told me everything. The accident had been catastrophic. I'd suffered a traumatic brain injury, broken ribs, a collapsed lung, internal bleeding. The doctors told my father I had less than a 30% chance of survival. And my father, hearing that prognosis and apparently doing some quick mental math about medical bills and inheritance, made a decision. He signed a do not resuscitate order. If my heart stopped, if I went into respiratory failure, if anything went critically wrong, the medical staff were instructed not to intervene. "Let her go peacefully," he'd told the doctors. "I don't want her to suffer." But Patricia knew the truth. My father wasn't concerned about my suffering. He was concerned about his money. You see, my grandmother had passed away 6 months before my accident. She'd left her house and a substantial portion of her estate to me in her will. My father had been furious about it. He'd expected to inherit everything as her only child. But my grandmother had been very clear in her will that the house and $50,000 were mine. My father got the rest, which was considerable, but he wanted it all. While I was unconscious, unable to defend myself or my interests, my father went to my grandmother's house with forged documents. He'd created a quitclaim deed with my signature on it, transferring ownership of the property from me to him. He'd forged my grandmother's will, changing the beneficiary from me to himself. And he'd accessed my bank account, which still had my grandmother listed as a co-owner from when I was younger, and transferred the $50,000 into his own account. He did all of this while I was in a coma, while the DNR he'd signed sat in my medical chart like a loaded gun. But here's what my father didn't know. Patricia had never trusted him. When she found out about the DNR, she went to the hospital administrator and the ethics board. She provided documentation showing that my grandmother had specifically wanted me to inherit the house. She questioned my father's motives. She made enough noise that the hospital put a hold on the DNR pending review. And then, on day 22 of my coma, my vitals crashed. My heart rate dropped. My oxygen levels plummeted. The DNR was still technically in effect. But the nurse on duty that night, a woman named Sarah, who'd been taking care of me since I arrived, made a choice. She called a code. The trauma team rushed in. They resuscitated me. They saved my life in direct violation of my father's order. Sarah was reprimanded for it. She almost lost her job. But she told the review board, I couldn't let that girl die when I knew her father just wanted her money. She didn't deserve that. 3 days later, I woke up. When Patricia told me everything, I didn't believe her at first. My father had always been difficult, controlling, money-focused, but this seemed impossible. He signed a DNR? I asked. To let me die? Patricia nodded. And he forged documents to steal your inheritance. We have proof. She showed me copies of the quitclaim deed. The signature wasn't even a good forgery. It looked nothing like how I actually signed my name. She showed me the altered will, the bank transfers, everything. I felt sick. Not from my injuries, from the betrayal. My father visited the hospital the next day. He walked in with flowers and a smile, playing the role of concerned father. Wendy, he said, you're awake. This is wonderful news. Get out, I said. My voice was weak, but the words were clear. What? Leave, I said. I know what you did. His face went carefully blank. I don't know what you're talking about. The DNR, I said. The forged deed, the stolen money, all of it. For a moment, he just stared at me. Then he tried to spin it. I signed the DNR because the doctor said you weren't going to make it, he said. I was trying to spare you pain. You were trying to spare yourself medical bills, I said, and explain the forged documents. That's a misunderstanding, he said quickly. Your grandmother wanted me to have the house. She told me before she died. Then why did her will say otherwise? I asked. He didn't have an answer for that. He left the hospital and I didn't see him again for 2 months. During my recovery, I worked with Patricia and a lawyer to gather evidence. We got the original will from the probate court. We got bank records showing the transfers. We got testimony from the hospital staff about the DNR and the circumstances around it. We built a case, but I wanted more than just legal justice. My father had spent his entire adult life cultivating an image. He was a deacon at our church. He volunteered with youth groups. He presented himself as a moral, upstanding Christian man. Everyone in our community respected him. They had no idea who he really was, so I decided to show them. 3 months after waking from the coma, still using a cane to walk, I went to Sunday service at our church. I hadn't been there since before the accident. People gasped when they saw me. They rushed over to hug me and tell me how glad they were that I'd survived. My father was at the front of the church, greeting people as they arrived. When he saw me, his face went white. The service started normally. Hymns, prayers, announcements. Then came the time for public testimony, when congregation members could stand and share their faith journey or ask for prayers. I stood up. My father's eyes locked onto me from across the room. I'd like to share something, I said. The pastor nodded and gestured for me to come forward. I walked slowly to the front, my cane tapping against the floor. The church was completely silent. 3 months ago, I began. I was in a terrible car accident. Many of you prayed for me. Many of you sent cards and messages. I'm grateful for that support, but there's something you don't know. While I was in a coma fighting for my life, my father signed a do not resuscitate order, not because he thought it was medically necessary, but because he wanted to avoid the cost of my care. Gasps echoed through the church. My father stood up. This is not appropriate, he said. Sit down, I told him, and while I was unconscious, I continued. He forged legal documents to steal the house my grandmother left me in her will. He transferred $50,000 from my account into his. He committed fraud and theft against his own daughter while she was in a coma. The church erupted, people talking over each other, some shouting denials, some demanding explanations. My father's face had gone from white to red. You're lying, he said. I have bank records, I said. I have the forged deed. I have testimony from hospital staff, and I've filed criminal charges. You can all expect to see this in the news very soon. The pastor tried to restore order, but it was chaos. My father stormed out. Half the congregation followed him, either to confront him or to defend him. I stood at the front of the church, shaking but resolute. The fallout was immediate and brutal. The story made local news within days. Church investigation launched into Deacon's alleged fraud. My father hired a lawyer and tried to fight the charges, but the evidence was overwhelming. The forged signatures, the bank transfers, the testimony from hospital staff about his comments regarding medical costs. All of it painted a clear picture. 6 months later, he took a plea deal. 3 years in prison for fraud, theft, and forgery, restitution of all stolen funds plus damages, and a permanent restraining order keeping him away from me. The church quietly removed his name from all their literature and never mentioned him again. My extended family split down the middle. Half of them believed me and supported me. The other half accused me of destroying my father's life over money, of being vindictive, of airing family business publicly instead of handling it privately. My uncle actually said to me, "You should have forgiven him quietly. That's what Christians do." And I said, "Christians also don't forge documents and let their daughters die for inheritance money." He didn't have a response to that. I moved into my grandmother's house once it was legally returned to me. Every room reminded me of her, of Sunday dinners and conversations about life, and her insistence that I would do something meaningful with my life. I think she'd be proud that I fought back, that I didn't stay silent, that I chose truth over family reputation. It's been 4 years now. My father got out of prison 8 months ago. He tried to contact me once, through a third party, saying he wanted to apologize and make amends. I declined. Some things you don't come back from. Signing a DNR so your daughter dies and stealing from her while she's unconscious. That's one of those things. I've healed, physically and emotionally. I still have some lingering effects from the brain injury. Moments where I lose words or get fatigued easily, but I'm alive. I'm here. I survived despite my father's best efforts to let me go. And every day I wake up in the house my grandmother left me. The house my father tried to steal, and I'm grateful. Not just for the house, but for the nurses who saved me. For my aunt who fought for me. For my own stubborn refusal to die quietly. So what do you think? Was exposing my father publicly the right move?